Saturday morning, Super Bowl weekend, and it's time to talk technology with Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group. Luis, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Mark. How are you today?
Doing really well, and looking forward to the big game tomorrow between the Rams and the Bengals. And I know we're going to talk about facial recognition at the airport, but before we get into that, have you seen anything about what kind of technology they're using at the Super Bowl at the new SoFi Stadium down in LA? Because this is supposed to be the most high-tech stadium ever built in the country. So I'm sure that they've got a lot of bells and whistles.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. So first and foremost, they have their own private 5G network, ultra-wide, just for the stadium to make sure that all 100,000 participants and fans and everybody else that's there can get their full access to their cell phones. And even if the surrounding area doesn't have ultra-wideband, they do. And it's both AT&T, well, I think all three services, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile are up there. They have the ability for you to tap into the same views that you're getting on the big screen. You can get on your tablet or on your smartphone, so you don't have to look up. You can just look at the same broadcast sitting on your phone. We're going to talk about facial recognition in a second, but they also, the Secret Service, this is considered a national security event. These giant, like the Super Bowl and Major League Baseball playoffs and all those sorts of things are considered to be national events. And so federal agencies get involved, including the Secret Service. And one of the things that they're doing is that they're using facial recognition to be able to detect anybody that's there that's a known threat or terrorist or that sort of thing, so that they don't disrupt the event. So as people walk through the gate to get in there, as well as throughout the stadium, they're constantly being monitored to make sure that they're not going to be a threat to the event itself and to any of the participants. Wow. And then they are also using a lot of really interesting, so the top of the dome is transparent, but it also has these lighting features. So from the outside, you can basically create these colorful signs and colorful messaging, but it doesn't block the view because of the technology that they use. So it's pretty spectacular. And as you can imagine, it's going to be a terrific game. Unfortunately, it's not going to be broadcast in 4K like last year, because NBC doesn't have the 4K technology kind of dialed in like Fox does. So we'll just see it in regular HD.
By the way, they say that this will be the last NFL broadcast for Al Michaels, that he is retiring after this Super Bowl.
I hadn't heard that. Wow.
Yeah, well, I heard that on
a high note.
Yeah, I heard that on one of the sports stations last week. So this is going to be it for Mr. Michaels, and he's certainly been one of the best.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's 77 or 79 now, and he does not sound it at all.
No, he looks great. He sounds great. So good for him. Yeah. He had a great career, and he's going to leave a huge legacy behind. He and John Madden and some of these greats that we've got used to listening in the broadcast booth for years. We're going to miss him.
First became familiar with Al Michaels back in the 1970s when his first big job was he was a play-by-play guy with the Cincinnati Reds. But he was in the second position to Marty Brennaman, who was an absolute legend in Ohio. And Brennaman was mid-career in the 70s, so he wasn't going anywhere. So Al was never going to become the number one guy in Cincinnati, not for at least another 20 years.
Oh, geez.
So the Giants announcing job opened up. So this is between Lon Simmons and Hank Greenwald, I believe. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Giants announcing job opened up, and Al Michaels came out here and did San Francisco Giants radio for maybe 2 or 3 seasons as their play-by-play guy before getting into the network era, where he's been ever since. So I remember hearing him early in his career, and boy, he was a great baseball announcer even then. Really authoritative and very knowledgeable.
Well, and you remember during the Loma Prieta earthquake, he was announcing the game between the Giants and
the Athletics.
And he went from being a sports broadcaster to being just a reporter,
right?
Reporting, on the scene of the earthquake up in the Bay Area, and it was amazing to me. It was like kind of a different side of him, but we were all riveted to the TV, listening to him talking about what the effects were right there in the area that he was at.
Yeah, you're right. I do remember that. All righty, well, let's move on to an article from Wired about opting out of facial recognition at the airport, and it's not easy. It can be done, but I guess there's some peril for travelers who try and do that. What's the story here?
Well, the U.S. government has implemented a policy of trying to bring in biometric detection as a way to get rid of a lot of manual processes. And one of the areas that they wanted to really emphasize was as you arrive into the airport from overseas or you left the country. And And their goal is that by the end of next year, that about 100% of commercial air travelers departing the U.S. will be using facial recognition rather than showing their passports to get board their planes. And I experienced this when I was coming back from a trip to Mexico recently, and I have a global entry, which is a kind of a TSA pre-check on steroids. And, I walked up to the kiosk. I expected to show my passport, but instead all it said was just stand here and show your face. And it clicked and said, okay, you can come in. And so it collects these images that are on passports and all sorts of other sources so that they can identify whoever's coming or going. The problem is that a lot of people think, privacy advocates think that this is kind of an invasion of privacy, especially if they're collecting these images for, thousands and thousands of people or millions of people that come in and out of the country. But you can opt out. The problem is that they don't tell you can opt out. The way you have to do it is you just go see the representative at the gate and you say, hey, I don't want to use a facial recognition system. I want to use the old, let me show you my passport and my boarding pass. And they'll let you do that. But most people just kind of go with the flow. So very few people opt out. In fact, the study that was done by Delta Customer Support showed that only 2% of passengers opted out of facial recognition because it was just easier to do it, to go through the facial recognition system rather than opting out.
Okay, so that's kind of where that is now. And I just wonder if there are any Fourth Amendment concerns. I would imagine that privacy advocates are very concerned about this and maybe look at it from a constitutional issue. Do you know of any challenges towards this, or is it just kind of this is the way it's going to be?
Well, I suspect that as people become, recently the IRS, for example, for a minute said that they were going to be using facial recognition to have people access their websites, but they had to back off of that because they got such blowback. And I think as more people start to see this as an invasion of privacy, you will get a lot of folks that are going to say, hey, this is a step too far, especially when all those photos of people's faces and the videos, who maintains the security of that? And how do you make sure that it's not used for any other purposes?
Well, great information from Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group. Online, it's alvareztg.com, @AlvarezTG. That's their Twitter handle. And Luis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.